Yes, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Lorrayn the Peyer, and it's a privilege for me to speak at this summit, um, Strategies to Overcome Anxiety and Depression. And I'm also the host of the summit here today. And I don't always share actually at the summits myself, but I feel particularly with this topic that I did want to share because I had such a complex history of anxiety and depression in my early adult life. And I think it's potentially helpful for some of you who are attending today to hear some of the nuances and some of the ways that I dealt with it. And so I will share a little bit of my personal history, which is that I had a very complexly uh, chronic uh, family patterns of abuse, and it was complex because it was in so many ways, I came from such a privileged background. So, family of origin was full of cultural icons at the time. You know, great, very famous film directors, artists, television personalities were very much a part of my childhood. And I was sexually abused as a child by a very prominent figure, and I was told that if I made a fuss, I'd be put in a home. So that kind of took my voice away. And my early school reports, which I still have actually, because my mother kept them, gave them to me, say that Lorrayn loved singing. Lorrayn, when I was in my, 7 years old, I loved singing, but because of what happened to me, I literally lost my voice. I mean, I lost the ability to sing. And I shut down completely. And it wasn't until I got into my 20s that I rediscovered my passion for singing. And I was actually living in the Philippines at the time, where I'd gone on to do qualifications and training in psychology. And I was actually teaching psychology in a university in the Philippines, near where my assistant today, Denise, who is on she's my virtual assistant, and she lives in a place called Bacolod, which is on Negros, the island of Negros, which is not far from a town called Dumaguete, where there was a university called Silliman University, and I was teaching psychology at that university, and I was miserable. I just knew I wasn't an academic, but I didn't know. I felt so frustrated. I felt like I was in a prison. I was depressed. I was depressed and I was anxious because I was trying to do something that didn't fit me. It wasn't the right size for me. I was going every day to teach lectures, to give lectures. I mean, actually, with some good reason, I was teaching Western psychology in the Philippines, and actually that's enough to bring anxiety because it wasn't relevant. But I was aware enough to be able to learn a lot from my students and kind of make it relevant for them. But it wasn't me. It was the academic world wasn't for me. But I didn't know what was for me, and so I just used to spend my time walking up and down the living room. And I had a small, because we didn't have much electricity at that time. I had a small cassette player. That's how far back we're going here, with a battery. So if there was a power cut, I could still play. And I was listening to all the music of the day, and I would be walking up and down the room, and I'd be just like, what do I want to do with my life? What do I want to do? I need to find the thing that is going to be me, the thing that I could do. And to cut a long story short, one of my colleagues, who we were roommates in this house, he brought to the house one evening some street musicians who were literally playing on the side of the street, and they were playing guitars and blues, singing the blues, and he brought them to the house, and we became friends. And I left my contract in Dumaguete and actually had the intention of going to Bali and then traveling through Malaysia, Indonesia to Thailand, and then either going east or west, depending on, I mean, it was, I was in my 20s. It was a different world then, and you could kind of do that thing. And I stayed in a apartment next door to a Dutch volunteer who had a bass player friend who was doing a gig. So I went to the gig and I listened to this music, and it was just so amazing. And then, to cut a long story short, I ended up meeting these very same street musicians that my friend had brought to our house. And I decided that I wanted to have a go singing, but it was much more and I actually got a book and an album that I've written about this process of finding my purpose, because I say to people that music saved my life, psychology explained my life, and metaphysics gave me life. So I'll explain a little bit more about this. When I realized that I wanted to do music and I wanted to sing, it really was like it was like the hand of God came down on me and said, Lorrayn, you are going to sing. And of course, when I suddenly realized that that was what it was, that I was going to do, that I wanted to do, it was a miracle. But miracles are actually very commonplace. And when they actually occur in your life, which they do, sometimes it seemed quite, it's like, oh, of course, how could I possibly have missed that? So I then began a whole career in music, and left psychology and became a professional singer. And before the end of my time today, I will play you a song at the end of my talk today, so you can hear, because I think it's important, because these two strands of my career, my music and my psychology and metaphysics, help inform you of why I was motivated to create this summit that we're on today, and also how I help people on their own journey deal with anxiety and depression. Because by finding something that gives you fulfillment, that is one way, and particularly a creative activity. Lots of the speakers already today have talked about singing, how they love singing, how that is a way of releasing the trauma that is leading to the anxiety and the depression in many cases. And so it was with me, because I had had my voice taken away from me, and I had been told that, I was later told that my reality was not true, that, when I found my voice and began to confront people with the fact that I'd been sexually abused as a child, I was told that I was making it up. And so that creates a sort of double, you think that you're mad. Very easily you begin to think that you're mad when these two opposing realities, everybody else is telling you that was rubbish, it's not true, and yet your own experience is completely different. So that's when the psychology then came in. And further down the road, I went on to have a successful career as a singer, and toured and performed all over the world. I went to America, sang there, and in Europe, and all over the world. But I eventually hit a wall in my early 30s and had what I call a breakthrough, not a breakdown, a breakthrough, where I then had to, at that time, I was not aware of what had happened to me. And I know that sounds incredible. How could I not have been aware? And of course, you do have a memory of trauma, but I'd never given it a voice. I'd never expressed it. And so the thing about buried feelings is that if they're buried alive, they come back up. And that's why I feel that this kind of a summit is very important, where we talk not only about our personal individual feelings, but we talk about what's kind of going on globally right now. Because if we don't address these things, if we just all live in a pink cloud, which is what I kind of did, it was my survival technique. I hung my hat on music, and I, devoted my life to music, and that pulled me through all of the pain. So I didn't have to feel the pain of the stuff that had happened to me. But it caught up with me. And it caught up with me just when I was about to have major success. And I went to my doctor, and I was in tears every day. I had a high profile job every night, singing in a big hotel in London. I'd sung in the Savoy Hotel nightly, singing every night. And I'd be going in with the full evening dress with the earrings and the makeup and the whole thing, you know. But in the days, I'd be on the carpet in tears, just like, what's the matter with me? I don't know what's going on. I feel just like the anxiety around in my, you know, just doing anything was really so huge. And I reached out for help to a beautiful GP doctor that I had. And she, because she knew my background in psychology, she said, you know too much. I'm not going to put you on, give you prescribed drugs to help this. I'm going to send you to somebody to speak to. And so then I started on my own psychotherapy. And I did that for many, many years. And it was incredibly helpful. And I mean, I wouldn't be here today without it. But it wasn't the end of the story. It didn't take me far enough. After I think probably about 15 years of psychotherapy, I was still in quite a lot of pain. And so I had to reach out then to lots of other modalities. I started to do body work. I started to have regular massage. Who knows why I was blessed with, the desire to do yoga. And I got into, some of the things people have talked today about things like crystals and shamanic healing. And I began to work, which is the way that I work with people now, on all of the body systems. It took really using all of the different humanistic systems, which in my language are the mind, that's mindset training, psychology, the body, physically, eating well, exercising, sleeping, not using substance addictions, all that kind of thing. Then what I would call the heart, which is the feelings, the emotions, and learning the relationship between thoughts and emotions, and again, psychology and an emotional understanding, and the understanding of love and how powerful the heart is, because there's so much evidence coming through now about the magnetic energy in the heart being equivalent, more or greater as a force than any than the brain. And other people today have already talked about how the whole body is actually broadcasting and aware. It's not just the mind; it's our whole body. Our whole body is a thinking, living being, not just the mind. So we've got the mind, we've got the body, we've got the heart, we've got the energy systems of the body. And there are going to be some speakers later today who are going to be talking about acupuncture and things like that, because all of the systems of the body create energy going through the body. So that's why acupuncture and shiatsu and some of the martial arts, Kundalini yoga and other things like that are about making sure that the whole system is in balance and is working energetically. And then finally is the spirit. It is what I call spirit, which is our connection with the universe, our connection with God, the universe, a higher power, whatever your words are. So there are these 5 systems. There is let's start with the body, then you've got the mind, then you've got the heart, then you've got energy, and then you've got spirit. And you can interchange different words for those things, but those are the 5. That's the holistic approach that I use to help people when I'm giving people in my programs and in my clinics. So I then reached out to some of these other healing modalities to help me. And and that's why I say that metaphysics saved my life, because then I began to understand about this relationship between what's going on inside of us and what's going on the outside of us. And so I called this talk As Within, So Without, because there is the physical world, and then there is the non-physical world. And it's very interesting that some of the latest research and information that's coming out from quantum physics aligns very strongly with what many of the great sages for years and years and years and years and generations, past, Muhammad, Jesus Christ, Buddha, we're all saying, and the scriptures all saying, is that there is an ability for us to connect energetically with the universe. And this relationship between the human being and the universe is what really fascinates me. And I lent on that when everything else failed me, when I was then again on my hands and knees, I had to accept social housing from the British government because I was suffering from emotional vulnerability. I wasn't using drugs or anything like that. I just, because of my history, I just completely imploded. And even things like, hearing the postman put a letter through the letterbox, just the sound of the letterbox. It was a form of ME, those of you who are familiar with that particular disability. But where was I going to go? I tried everything. I tried the doctors, and I did think, okay, maybe I need to, admit myself to a psychiatric hospital. Maybe I do need to take drugs now. But I was determined, no, I don't want to go down that route because everything that I knew, and it's a very personal decision, but for me, everything that I had learned was that if I could step through whatever these blocks were, then I would be able to heal myself. And I did. And that's who I am today. And that's where I am today. And way too short a time to go into all the different practices and things that I did and that I still do. But I just thought I'd give you the 3 steps that I took today, and then you can think about this and maybe apply them to your own lives too. Because what interests me now is the prevention of mental illness, the prevention of anxiety and depression, as well as curing the symptoms of those people who have that right now. Because also I feel like we need to do this globally. We need to actually prevent us having a crisis where everything breaks down, where we have, and it's up to us all to speak out and own what we know so that this doesn't happen. So, okay, the first thing, step 1, is to really look at how it is now. What is going on for you now? So I'm going to ask those of you who will be so kind in the chat, just give me a number where 1 is, let's do it this way around. 1 is terrible and 10 is absolutely great. Where are you on that spectrum today? 1 is terrible and 10 is great. Just today, how are you feeling today? Let's hear it. How are you feeling? So, okay, somebody's 10, great. 1 is terrible, 10 is great. Where are you on that spectrum today? How are you feeling today? We're getting quite a few people are saying 10. That's great to hear. You don't need me then. Okay, so there's some people coming in at 4. Okay. Yeah, where are you today? Are you below 5? How are you feeling today? Let's not worry about, what it's all about and all of that. Right now, here today, where are you? How are you feeling today? Are you on the below 5 or are you above 5? Because this was what I wasn't able to do in the early part of my life. I was not able to really understand what was going on inside of me. I was unable to feel my feelings because it was too painful. So what did I do? I traveled, I went around the world, I sang, and that was fine, actually. I mean, that was a way for me to naturally heal myself. If I could have actually had the support to be able to look at and understand what was really going on for me during that time, then I think my life might have been very different as it unfolded. Not that I regret a single thing, because I wouldn't be here today if that. But so that's the first step, is to really understand where you are today, and what are your resentments? What happened in your childhood? And in my team of the people who help me, I have some psychotherapists who work with me. So I don't do all of the whole of my program. I actually have psychotherapists who take that part, and I do a lot of the metaphysical and mindset and motivational training in my programs. So that's the first step. Then the second step is, and this is only possible once you really kind of clear the channels, open them up, of resentments, anxieties, depression, or start getting free of that, is then, what do I want? What do I really want? Now, that's actually quite a big question to really decide what you really want. And there are lots of layers to that. And so, we help you to really get clear about that, because if you can get clear about it, then you can move on to step 3, which is the steps to actually materialize that. So I was listening to I'm going to go back later and listen to it again, to a short webinar on YouTube about the different brainwave patterns that we use for meditation. And they were talking about delta. There's alpha, there's beta, alpha, theta, delta, gamma. There's lots of different brainwave patterns that each, when we tap into them, have the ability to have different qualities that they can help us with. And this particular webinar was about delta, the delta level of brainwave patterns. And we've got somebody coming on later today who's going to talk about meditation and mindfulness, who will no doubt touch on this. But by using some of these techniques, and using some of the techniques that other speakers have spoken about today as well, we are able actually to bend reality. And I'm going to give you one actual example of somebody who did this. And when I say this and explain it to you, you will understand perfectly. And that is Nelson Mandela. Now, Nelson Mandela was incarcerated for 25 years. And you can bet your bottom dollar that he sat there every day and he visualized his country without apartheid. And what happened when he came out? You know the story. Even though I know South Africa still has its problems, but that is such a powerful example of a man who harnessed these abilities. And we all have the abilities to do that. And that's why I am sitting here, because that's what I've done. And I've done it again and again. I did it with my music. I did it with my psychology. I did it with, what I'm doing now. And you all have the power to do that. And we collectively have the power to shift massive things in our world. So, for example, let's see, I mentioned apartheid, slavery, that was something that was a given, and shamefully in this country, in the UK, and that's changed. Women's rights is another thing that was, it seemed impossible that would change. And throughout our history, there have been things that we felt, human beings en masse, seemed like there was no way that we could change those things. And it seems to me now, at the risk of being political, but that we are very much now in a time where a very few of the population of our world are making the decisions for the masses, and that we need to, all of us, to speak out and own our own power. Otherwise, we will not be presented with it. And these are the techniques that I have used to help me do that. So I'm going to ask my assistant now to put in the chat how you can connect with me and my free gift. And my free gift is a month's free membership to my Courage to Connect community. Courage to Connect, that is the courage to connect to each other, the courage to connect to our bodies, the courage to connect, to the energy of the universe. And I've created a membership club, if you like, which is a monthly subscription. It's just but the free month, the first month is going to be free to you, which you can see it now. It's in the chat. You have the I have a month's free. So inside that are hundreds of different videos from other experts, not only myself, but I do talk about this particular technique that I've created called quantum courage visioning, which is where we access the theta level and the delta level to help manifest the life that you want to do. So, you know, there isn't a risk to join it. It's free for the first month, and then after that, it rolls over into a monthly subscription of just, well, I think it works out at a few pence a day. And there's dozens of hours of content. There's meditations, resources, masterclasses, my music, which I'm not going to get a chance to play today, actually, because I'm going to on a stick. But I'll put some of my music on when we get to the break, I think. I'll put a couple of songs on from my last album, which is called The Voice of Courage. And then I'll also get Denise to put a link in there. You could put the link in, Denise, for how people can listen to my last album. And I've got a new album coming out and a book coming out, which traces my journey to becoming a singer. So you'll be able to also see that and have access to that. So yes, I am very grateful to have had the opportunity to speak to you all today about this. And thank you very much indeed, for listening. And I think probably I didn't actually record my own talk, but that's okay. So